You may have answered this question. You probably did, but are there any other unique items about the DUI or OVI laws in the particular counties you serve or the state you serve?
Well, yeah, there is one, and that is that the courts have the discretion in some cases. In some cases, they have no discretion. They have to issue what they call restricted plates. And a restricted plate is a plate that is of different color. In Ohio, it's orange background with red letters to let everybody know that, in fact, you have been convicted of an OVI. Now, if you're a second-time offender in 6 years, those plates are required. But even first-time offenders can get those plates, and for many people, that's the kiss of death. If you're a school teacher or have any type of traveling where people are going to see your plates, it makes it very difficult for them. So that's always a concern of mine when they're facing the yellow plate, is how to get around
Hmm.
that. And there are ways. They're difficult, but it can be done.
What about if someone has those plates? Are they a target for police to pull them over? More likely to be pulled over by police.
Absolutely, especially depending on the time of day you're out. If you're out, if you're a restaurant worker and you ordinarily get home at about 1 a.m. or you leave for home at about 1 a.m., that's the best time for the police to start their fishing expedition, and they know it. First of all, what's somebody doing on the road at 1 a.m.? More than likely they had something to drink. They see that yellow plate, and they're going to stop you.
Hmm. All right. And how long do people have to have the plates on
For
average?
the length of their suspension, and that suspension could go from anywhere. If it's a second time offender, 1 to 3 years.
Wow.
So you could have that plate for a very long time.
Yeah, it's the scarlet letter, essentially.
And the second time offenders, by the way, also get an interlock device placed on their car, which means they have to breathe into a device in order to start their vehicle. That's required with a second OVI in 6 years. And there's many false starts. This is not very good science behind these machines. And a lot of times, what happens is if they get a false start, like if they use mouthwash or cough medicine, now they're facing a probation violation.
Really?
We have to go to court for that. So it makes it fairly difficult.
Wow. Are there any laws in the state of Ohio that address drivers with a BAC below zero point zero 0.08?
You could still be charged and convicted because remember, it's operating a vehicle impaired. If you're impaired, uh, it doesn't matter if you're .07, you still can be convicted of operating a vehicle impaired.
Hmm. Okay.
So if you have a very low tolerance for alcohol, and a couple beers will do it for you, put you over the edge, and the officer gives you the field sobriety test, arguably you can be convicted.
Okay. So what would be your best tip when someone's had one or more drinks and they're in the process of being pulled over? What should they do? What shouldn't they do?
Well, first of all, they have to know that the officer is in control. Okay. Uh, you want to speak to the officer as little as possible. You'll answer his questions politely. Uh, you, what he's trying to do is he's gathering evidence against you. He's trying to get the fact that, look at his speech was slurred. I smelled an odor of alcohol. He had difficult getting his license out, his license and registration. See, that gives them reason to get you out of the car to do the field sobriety test. So you want to keep the conversation polite to a minimum. Always make sure you know where your driver's license, registration, and proof of insurance is so you don't go fumbling around. Because fumbling around gives them one excuse to get you out of the car.
Okay. Earlier, you talked about the police searching your vehicle. What's the rules on that? Do they have to be allowed to do that? What circumstances can they?
Well, there is an exception. Of course, the Fourth Amendment protects us from warrantless searches to a degree, and there's a whole host of exceptions. The exception for the drunk driving arrest is that they call it an inventory search. An inventory search, because the car is going to be impounded somewhere, the theory is to protect the officer and the police department and the city from claims that things are missing out of the car. They do an inventory search to say, well, this is what was inside of that vehicle.
Hmm.
Okay, uh, that gives them the excuse to search the car. But many times, if they do find something that's leading to charges for your client, you could say, all right, you did an inventory search. Let's see the inventory list. If they have no inventory list, then why are they searching the car? I
Okay.
mean, that's the question.
And is there a difference before you're arrested if you can refuse, or after you're arrested?
Absolutely, it's before you're arrested. They have to have probable cause to get in that car. They have to see something. The most common Fourth Amendment exception is plain view. They see a pipe, a marijuana pipe, laying on the back seat. They see a beer can uh, on the passenger side floor. Something in plain view will give them the reasonable suspicion and probable cause necessary to allow them to search your car legally. So you want to keep your car as neat as possible.
Okay.
Not too much trash laying around. Also, a lot of times it's a smell. They could smell something, and it's really hard to disprove what somebody smelled. I
Hmm.
had a client one time that was stopped. He was driving on the freeway, and the officer said he smelled the marijuana as he drove by at 65 miles per hour.
Okay.
Why they need drug dogs if they have people like that?
Well, what kinds of help can you provide to people charged for DUI, OVI? Can you possibly reduce jail time or fines, or what kinds of things can you
Well,
do?
there's a whole host of bad things that can happen to you with an OVI arrest. The system moves very quickly. Uh, you have 5 days. You have a hearing within 5 days, first of all, on appealing what they call the administrative license suspension. You have 35 days from the date of arraignment to file a motion to suppress. You have to have all your information and analyze it before that 35 days is up. People have concerns too. There's a lot of people, like in Ohio, a first-time offender. You can't drive for 15 days. For a lot of people, that is a death knell because they have to drive to get to their job. So a lot of times, what they'll want to do is they'll want to risk driving, and if they're picked up, now they're facing another first-degree misdemeanor, which is driving under suspension,
Hmm.
which they don't want to have. There's ways, so you consider your client's circumstances. It's very important for your client to get on the road as quickly as possible. You're going to try to find ways to get him on the road legally before that 15 days is up. Uh, for some people, there's other concerns. You always take their concerns and see what's important to them and see if you can resolve these issues as quickly as possible. The first goal is always to get your client on the road legally as soon as you can, and every court has different requirements in order to get those occupational privileges. Some courts, even for a first-time offender, will require a drug and alcohol assessment. You
Hmm.
better know what court that is so you can get your client in for a drug alcohol assessment immediately so you can get them occupational privileges.
Right. Right.
There's a lot of things that you can do for your client, and you could save them a lot of grief. And you could defend the case. You have to defend the case vigorously. And along the way, there's all these procedural devices that you have to be aware of, and you want to make this event the least intrusive on your client's life as possible. And that's what I've succeeded in doing with 98% of my clients.
Wow. Okay. So, what would you say are the pros and cons of hiring a private lawyer versus a public defender versus defending yourself?
Defending yourself would be a problem. You wouldn't know everything that was going on. You would have no idea the implications of what was going on. Uh, the courts, when they bring you up in front of them, and if you plead no contest or guilty, you don't know what's going to happen to you, and you're not going to understand even what the court is saying because they explain it so fast. They'll just go right over your head. Public defenders are definitely necessary lawyers because there's a lot of people that just can't afford an attorney, and it's better than having nothing. But you have to remember they handle hundreds of cases. They have a huge caseload, and they can't devote the attention to your case like a private attorney would. And the private attorney, or at least what I do, the first thing out of the box, I spend an hour to an hour and a half with the client going over all the details of the arrest as well as what their needs are. And then I explain to them what's going to go on and what we're going to do and how we're going to approach it. Because based upon what they're telling me, I'm going to, emphasize certain defenses that I'm going to be looking for.
Okay.
And they understand. And they could call me at any time of the day. I give all my clients my cell phone number, so if they have a concern, I let them call me, because I know that they're very uneasy about what's happening. They're depressed. A lot of them are depressed. A lot of them, especially people are very sensitive to this. Okay, they're very sensitive what's going on. People that have never had a brush with the law before, all of a sudden see themselves as some type of criminal element.
Hmm.
And I try to dispel that myth and try to explain to them that, look, this is a crime that 95% of the population is guilty of. It just so happens that you got caught.
Right.
And they usually, especially the first time offenders, they beat themselves up far worse than the court will.
Huh. Okay. Well, I guess you've answered a lot of the next question I was going to ask you about people's insights into, or your insights into people's behavior, their reactions to being arrested. But I mean, what other human insights have you gained into the whole process? Anything more you want to say?
Yeah. Oh, first of all, it starts from the very beginning, being stopped by a policeman. Okay. They ask you to do field sobriety tests. People are scared out of their wits. They don't know what to think. They're not listening. All they're thinking is they're in trouble. And the officer, when he administers those field sobriety tests, gives a lot of instructions quickly,
Hmm.
and they grade you in ways that you would never believe, or you wouldn't believe. But they're also seeing how you follow instructions, and people are afraid. People are embarrassed. People don't know what's going to happen to them. They don't know how it's going to affect their lives. They don't know how they're going to get through it. And I give them this information up front. I let them know the very specific details of their case and the court that we're in, and what we could probably do for them. And it relieves them to a degree, but the people are very sensitive to what goes on, and helping them through the process, as I say, to me, that's very gratifying.
Okay. Is there a particular story that you hear over and over from the potential clients?
Yes, the story that I hear, that this judge's daughter was killed by a drunk driver. The mythical hanging judge who's got an axe to grind because a family member was killed by a drunk driver. I never met that judge, but that rumor runs rampant.
Huh. Okay.
I don't know where they get that rumor from, if it's a scare tactic that somebody tells them, but I've never known a judge whose child was killed by a drunk driver.